The Banishment. The massive amphitheater of the Galactic Council buzzed with anticipation. Thousands of delegates from hundreds of species filled the tiered seating that spiraled upward along the curved walls. At the center, a single platform hovered beneath the crystalline dome, where the stars shimmered through like distant observers to the proceedings below. Commander Sora Nakamura stood rigid on that platform, her military posture betraying nothing of the fury that raged within. Beside her, Dr. Marcus Chen fidgeted with the sleeve of his formal diplomatic attire, his scientific mind racing to find a logical argument that might sway the Council. They were Earth's final representatives, sent to hear the verdict that both already knew was coming. High Chancellor Xolotl, a towering being with iridescent scales and 6 limbs that moved with unnerving grace, raised 4 of his arms for silence. The council chamber gradually quieted. The Galactic Council has deliberated on the matter of Earth and its colonies. Xolotl's voice resonated through the chamber, translated simultaneously into every language. For the safety and stability of our united civilizations, we have reached an unanimous decision. Sora's jaw clenched. Unanimous. Not even their supposed allies had stood with humanity. Earth has demonstrated a pattern of behavior incompatible with the harmony of the Galactic Council. Xolotl continued. Your species' unpredictability, your tendency toward violence, your refusal to accept established hierarchies, and your rapid technological advancement present an unacceptable risk. Marcus stepped forward. Chancellor, if I may. The time for debate has passed. Xolotl interrupted. The Council has spoken. Earth and all human colonies are hereby expelled from Council space. All treaties, trade agreements, and diplomatic relations are dissolved. Humans will withdraw to their home system within 1 standard cycle. Any human found in Council space after this period will be considered outside our protection. The chamber erupted in a mixture of approving calls and shocked whispers. Sora surveyed the room, memorizing the faces of those who celebrated their downfall, and the few who looked away in shame. This is a mistake, Sora said, her voice cutting through the noise. The room gradually quieted, curious to hear humanity's response. You fear us because we are different, because we challenge your comfortable patterns. But remember this moment, Chancellor, when you cast aside the one species that might have saved you from yourselves. Xolotl's head tilted in what might have been amusement. Your threats only confirm our decision, Commander. The Council has spoken. You are dismissed. As they were escorted from the chamber, Marcus whispered, That went about as well as expected. It went exactly as they planned. Sora replied through gritted teeth. They've been looking for an excuse. The Centauri incident just gave them one. Once aboard their ship, the Horizon, Sora slammed her fist against the bulkhead. The crew, a mixture of military personnel and diplomats, watched in silence as Earth's 2 representatives absorbed the reality of their situation. They think they've broken us, Sora said finally, turning to address the gathered crew. They expect us to retreat to Sol, to wither away without access to Council resources and technologies. Marcus nodded, his analytical mind already racing ahead. Which means they don't understand humans at all. Precisely, Sora smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Send word to Earth. All colonies. Project Diaspora begins now. In the weeks that followed, humanity faced its greatest logistical challenge. Millions of colonists across dozens of worlds had to be evacuated. Some colonies chose to abandon their settlements entirely. Others, those furthest from Council oversight, decided to go dark, cutting communications and disappearing from official records. On Earth, the global response surprised even those who had long studied human psychology. Instead of fracturing into panic or blame, the population rallied. The ancient rivalries between nations faded as humanity recognized the existential challenge they faced. They united against us, Admiral Helena Wong observed during an emergency summit in New Geneva. So we'll unite against them. Under the guidance of leaders like Sora and scientists like Marcus, humanity enacted what would later be known as the Phoenix Protocol. Earth's industries were retooled for deep space exploration and settlement. The colonies that remained beyond Council detection became forward outposts, hidden staging grounds for humanity's expansion into the unknown regions beyond Council space. 6 months after the banishment, Sora stood on the bridge of the Defiance, Earth's newest flagship. Marcus joined her, now serving as Chief Science Officer for the expedition. "The Council believes we're licking our wounds in the Sol system," Sora said, watching as Earth grew smaller on the view screen. "They've posted patrols along our borders to ensure we stay there. But they never bothered to check what we were doing before the banishment," Marcus replied with a small smile. "Project Diaspora has survey data on 12 potential habitable worlds beyond the Council's claimed territories, not to mention the deep space stations we've been secretly constructing for the past 5 years." Sora nodded. "The Council thinks they've contained us. What they've actually done is freed us from their restrictions. No more technology sharing limitations. No more settlement quotas. No more being treated as the dangerous younger species that needs supervision." As the Defiance prepared to make its first jump beyond known space, Sora addressed the crew one final time. "The Council believes they've sentenced us to a slow death. Instead, they've given us the greatest gift possible: independence. We'll build our own future among the stars they thought too dangerous or worthless to claim. And when we return, because make no mistake, we will return, they'll discover what humanity is truly capable of when pushed to the edge." The ship vanished into the darkness between stars, the first of many to carry humanity beyond the boundaries that had been imposed upon them. Over the next 3 years, human expansion accelerated at a pace that would have horrified the Council had they known. The worlds beyond their space, which they had dismissed as too harsh or resource-poor, flourished under human innovation. Adaptability, the very trait the Council feared, became humanity's greatest strength. On Titan's Forge, a world of perpetual storms and valuable mineral deposits, humans built cities beneath the violent clouds, mining resources the Council had never figured out how to access. On New Eden, they terraformed regions of a planet the Council had abandoned after failed attempts centuries earlier. The Void Stations, massive habitats constructed in deep space, became centers of scientific advancement, freed from the Council's restricted research ethics. And as they built their new civilization in the shadows, they watched. Observation posts monitored Council communications. Stealth ships mapped patrol routes. Dormant agents who had chosen to remain in Council space sent regular intelligence reports. They learned of the growing fractures among Council species, the resource shortages, and the brewing political tensions. They discovered that without humanity to unite against, old rivalries had resurfaced. Most concerning of all, they detected unusual activity in the regions beyond Council space, opposite to human expansion. Something was stirring in the darkness, something ancient, something hungry. And the Galactic Council, in their complacency, was utterly unprepared. The return. 5 years, 2 months, and 17 days after humanity's banishment, the Galactic Council's outpost in the Proxima sector went silent. It wasn't the first. Over the preceding months, several remote Council facilities had ceased communications. Initial investigations found only abandoned stations, their inhabitants seemingly vanished without struggle. The Council dismissed these occurrences as equipment failures or possibly the work of pirates. They would later recognize this as their second greatest mistake. The first had been exiling humanity. High Chancellor Xylotl stared at the holographic display in the Council's war room. Red markers indicated the growing number of silent outposts and colonies, forming a clear pattern of advance toward Council core worlds. "How many lost now?" he asked the assembled military leaders. Admiral Thrax, commander of the Council's defense forces, gestured with one of his 4 arms, expanding the display. 17 outposts, 3 colony worlds, over 20,000 citizens unaccounted for, and still no communication from whatever is responsible. Xylotl's scales shifted colors with his agitation. "None," Thrax confirmed. Our scouts find only empty settlements, no signs of conventional warfare, no bodies, just absence. Council Representative Mira, one of the few who had argued against humanity's banishment, spoke from her seat. Have we considered requesting information from the humans? Their territory borders the affected region. Xylotl scales flashed red. We do not need human assistance. They were exiled for good reason. With respect, Chancellor, Mira persisted. Our sensors cannot penetrate far into the uncharted regions. The humans have had 5 years to establish themselves there. They might have information we lack. Before Xylotl could respond, the chamber's alert system blared. Admiral Thrax rushed to the communication terminal, his expression darkening as he received the incoming report. The colony on Vega III is under attack, he announced. We're receiving visual data. The holographic display shifted to show chaos. The feed was fragmented, distorted, but clear enough to reveal the horror. Shadowy figures moved with impossible speed through the streets of the colony. Where they touched, life simply faded. Not death in any conventional sense. The victims seemed to collapse inward, their physical forms breaking down at a molecular level. What are we seeing? Xylotl demanded, his composure cracking. Unknown, Thrax replied. But the defensive fleet at Vega reports that conventional weapons have minimal effect. The feed abruptly cut out. The chamber fell silent. How long until they reach Council core worlds at their current pace? Mira asked quietly. Weeks, perhaps days, Thrax admitted. Our fleets are mobilizing, but the unspoken truth hung heavy in the air. The Council, for all its age and accumulated knowledge, had never faced a threat like this. Their military was designed for peacekeeping and border security, not existential warfare. We need help, Mira said firmly. Whatever grudges we hold, whatever fears we harbor about humanity, they seem trivial now. Xylotl's scales shifted through patterns of distress before settling into a reluctant blue acceptance. Send the message. But do not expect salvation from those we cast aside. Sora Nakamura, now Admiral of humanity's United Fleet, stood aboard the command deck of the Phoenix, Earth's most advanced warship. The vessel represented the pinnacle of what humanity had achieved in their exile. Technology that merged their own innovations with reverse-engineered council systems and entirely new principles discovered in the uncharted regions. They're getting desperate, Marcus observed, reviewing the council's transmission. Now director of Synosians, he had spent the past 5 years studying the entity humanity had designated as the Fade. 300 outposts and colonies lost, Sora noted. And they only contact us now, when the Fade approaches their core worlds. To be fair, Marcus replied, we've been aware of the Fade for nearly 2 years and haven't shared our intelligence either. Sora's expression remained neutral. We had our reasons. Those reasons were complex. Humanity had first encountered the Fade 18 months earlier when it approached one of their frontier settlements. Unlike the Council, humans had immediately recognized the threat and responded with characteristic adaptability. The settlement had been evacuated, but not before collecting crucial data on the entity. What followed was an intensive research effort across the human worlds. The Fade, they discovered, was not a conventional life form, but something far stranger, a semi-sentient phenomenon that existed partially outside normal space-time. It consumed energy in all forms, including the complex energy patterns of living beings. Most critically, they discovered that it had a particular aversion to certain radiation frequencies produced by technology that the Council had deemed too dangerous to develop, technology that humans had perfected in their exile. We could just leave them to their fate, Vice Admiral Chen suggested from his station, after what they did to us. Sora considered this briefly before shaking her head. That's what they would do. That's why they exiled us, because they feared we wouldn't follow their rules when it truly mattered. She turned to face her senior officers, but proving them right would only prove we deserved our exile. We're going to help them, not because they deserve it, but because that's who we are. The decision was made. Within hours, the human fleet, over 200 ships strong, departed their hidden bases and set course for Council space. The Council's central defense station orbiting their capital world was in chaos when the human fleet arrived. The station's commanders had been preparing for a last stand against the advancing Fade when their long-range sensors detected the massive fleet approaching. "They've sent an invasion force," a junior officer cried out. Admiral Thrax studied the sensor readings more carefully. "No," he said slowly. "Look at their formation. That's not an attack pattern." The human ships arranged themselves in a defensive screen between the Fade's approach vector and the Council capital. The Phoenix broke formation and approached the station, requesting permission to dock. Within the station's diplomatic chamber, Admiral Sora Nakamura faced High Chancellor Xolotl for the first time since humanity's banishment. Neither showed any sign of warmth, but the desperate circumstances demanded cooperation. "You actually came," Xolotl observed, his scales shifting in patterns of surprise and suspicion. "The Fade threatens all life, not just the Council," Sora replied evenly. "We've been studying it since our first encounter. We believe we've developed effective countermeasures." Marcus stepped forward, activating a holographic display of his own. The Fade exists partially outside conventional spacetime. It's drawn to complex energy patterns, particularly life and technology. Conventional weapons pass through it because they're not actually hitting its true form. Thrax leaned forward. "Then how do we fight something we cannot truly touch?" "By touching the space between spaces," Marcus explained. "We've developed technology that generates specific radiation frequencies that can disrupt its partial existence in our reality, forcing it to fully materialize or retreat." He displayed schematics for what the humans had designated phase disruptors. "The technology is based on principles your Council banned 3 centuries ago," Sora added with a hint of challenge in her voice. "Principles we've spent our exile perfecting." Xolotl's scales darkened. "You expect us to believe you developed this in just 5 years? Without your restrictions?" "Yes." Sora met his gaze unflinchingly. "We're not asking permission, Chancellor. We're offering salvation. The choice is yours." For a long moment, Xolotl was silent, the ancient pride of the Council warring with the immediate threat of extinction. Finally, his scales settled into a pattern that humans had never seen before, one that conveyed profound humility. "What do you require from us?" he asked. The battle that followed would later be known as the Stand at Meridian. The human fleet, augmented by Council vessels retrofitted with phase disruptor technology, engaged the Fade in the space before the Council capital. For the first time in its expansion, the entity faced resistance it could not simply absorb. Sora commanded from the Phoenix, coordinating the human ships with a precision that astonished the Council observers. The vessels moved in complex, seemingly chaotic patterns that somehow formed a perfect adaptive defense. When the Fade shifted its approach, the human fleet responded instantly, as though anticipating its movements. The phase disruptors forced portions of the Fade to fully materialize in normal space, where conventional weapons could then destroy them. Slowly, methodically, the combined fleet drove the entity back. 3 days later, the remnants of the Fade retreated beyond sensor range, its consciousness apparently deciding that the energy cost of continuing was too high relative to the potential gain. In the aftermath, Sora stood once more before the full Galactic Council. This time, however, she was not on trial. The chamber that had once pronounced humanity's exile now fell silent as she approached the central platform. "The Fade has retreated for now," she informed them. "But our analysis suggests it will return, possibly with adaptation to our current defenses. This isn't over." Xolotl, humbled by recent events, inclined his head. "The Council recognizes that we misjudged humanity. Your exile was a decision made from fear rather than wisdom." "Fear is a poor advisor," Sora agreed, "as is pride. Both nearly doomed us all." The Council formally resigns the exile of Earth and all human settlements. Xylotl announced, "We invite humanity to rejoin the galactic community with full rights and privileges." A murmur ran through the chamber. Even after the humans had saved them, many counselors had not expected a full reversal. Sora allowed herself a small smile. "With respect, Chancellor, humanity must decline." The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. "Declined?" Xylotl's scales flickered in confusion. "But you have proven yourselves. You have earned your place." "We didn't help you to earn readmission to the Council," Sora explained. "We helped because it was the right thing to do. But in our exile, we've built something different, something new. We've created societies and technologies that would never have been possible under Council restrictions." "What are you proposing?" Mira asked, leaning forward with interest. "An alliance between equals," Sora replied. "Not humanity rejoining as a member species, but the human coalition and the Galactic Council as separate but ally powers. We will share technology, coordinate defenses against threats like the Fade, establish trade, but we will remain independent." Xylotl considered this. "And if we refuse?" "Then we return to our space, and you to yours," Sora said simply. "But I think recent events have demonstrated that both our civilizations are stronger together than apart, not as ruler and ruled, but as equals with different strengths." In the end, the Council had little choice. Humanity had proven not only their worth but their power. The exile meant to contain them had instead unleashed their potential. The alliance was formalized, and a new era began. Years later, as human and Council ships patrolled together against the returned Fade, Marcus found Sora on the observation deck of the Phoenix. "Do you think they've learned their lesson?" he asked, watching the mixed fleet maneuver in perfect coordination. Sora considered the question. "I think they're learning the same lesson we did. True strength comes not from control, but from adaptation. Not from fear, but from cooperation despite differences." "And if they forget again?" Sora smiled, watching as a new experimental ship, built with combined human innovation and Council wisdom, moved into formation. "Then we'll remind them. That's what allies do." The stars stretched before them, no longer divided into Council and human space, but a shared frontier filled with both threats and possibilities. The exile that was meant to be humanity's end had instead been just the beginning.